The whole room fell silent as my parents' words echoed through the air. "You are a disgrace to this family." The sting of their words didn't just cut deep. It felt like a part of me was being torn away, shredded in front of everyone I cared about. But what hit hardest wasn't the words themselves. It was the sheer public humiliation. The shock on everyone's faces, the coldness in my parents' eyes. I was no longer the daughter they once adored. I had become a failure, a disappointment in their eyes, and it was all out there, on full display for everyone to see. I stood there, frozen, not knowing whether to cry, scream, or just run away. I could feel the weight of their judgment, the suffocating pressure of their expectations. Every glance in the room made me feel smaller, as if I was fading into the background. My heart pounded in my chest, and my stomach twisted with shame. But just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, he walked in. My boyfriend, rich, successful, and always so put together, entered the room. His presence almost like a calm breeze in a storm. There was something different about him that night. His eyes, they weren't filled with pity or concern, like I'd expected. No, they had a glint in them, something I couldn't quite place. Confidence, knowledge. It felt like he had already seen what was coming, like he knew exactly what to do. And then, without a word, he stepped forward. The room held its breath as he approached me, but it wasn't to comfort me. No, what he did next wasn't about sympathy. It was about something far bigger, a shift in the world I thought I knew. That moment, it changed everything. It was supposed to be a celebration, a gathering to mark some achievement in our family. I had tried to convince myself it would be a night like any other, relaxed, easy, and filled with laughter. But when my parents turned on me, everything fell apart in an instant. The room was filled with guests, friends, distant relatives, colleagues, but I felt like I was standing alone in the spotlight. My mother's voice, cold and sharp, cut through the chatter. "You've disappointed us," she said, her words chilling and clear. "You've become a disgrace to this family." The weight of her accusation pressed down on me, suffocating any hope of retreat. My father's eyes were hard, unforgiving, and there was no love, no understanding in them, only judgment. I stood frozen, unable to grasp what was happening. This wasn't just a reprimand. This wasn't just a typical family disagreement. There was something else here, something darker beneath the surface. The way they spoke of me, the venom in their tone, it felt like they were revealing a secret, one I wasn't meant to know. As they continued, their words felt like daggers, each one plunging deeper. And yet, as much as the humiliation stung, there was something else gnawing at me, curiosity. Why were they doing this? What had I done to deserve this kind of cruelty? That's when I knew. I needed to uncover the truth behind their words, behind the hidden hatred. I couldn't let this moment of shame define me. I had to dig deeper, find out what secret they were protecting, and why it had taken this form of punishment to surface. The shame I felt was just the beginning, the first step on a path that would lead me into a truth I never saw coming. I could feel the tension in the room like a thick fog, heavy and suffocating. Her parents were tearing into her, their voices sharp, every word calculated to hurt. It was unbearable to watch, yet I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't rush to her side like I should have. It wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I knew something she didn't. She looked at me, her eyes pleading for some kind of rescue, for a sign that I was there, that I would defend her. But I just stood still. The room was tense with disbelief. Everyone was waiting for me to intervene. They were waiting for the rich boyfriend to save the day, for me to swoop in with some clever line or comforting gesture. But I didn't do that. I wasn't playing the part of the perfect boyfriend. I was watching, listening, letting the situation unfold. There was something about her parents' accusations, their words dripping with disdain, that didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just their anger, it was the way they carried themselves, like they were trying to expose her, to break her. They were revealing more than just disappointment. They were hiding something, and I knew she was about to find out. I wasn't here just as her boyfriend. I wasn't here to be her knight in shining armor. I had to let her face the truth for herself, as painful as it was going to be. She couldn't see it yet, but I had been preparing for this moment for a long time. I had been watching them, understanding their actions even before we met. This wasn't the first time they had done something like this. There were patterns, hidden signs that only I could see, and I had to let her uncover them, even if it meant watching her suffer for a while longer. It wasn't easy to stand there, so still, as she bled emotionally in front of everyone. But sometimes, the hardest thing to do is nothing at all. The truth would come in its own time, and when it did, everything would change. The confrontation had been brutal. The room had emptied, the guests awkwardly shuffling away, trying to avoid the chaos that had just unfolded. She was standing there, still reeling from her parents' cruel words, her shoulders tense, her eyes full of hurt and confusion. I could see it in her face. She was lost. She was wondering what went wrong, why her parents hated her so much, and where it had all come from. But I wasn't going to give her answers just yet. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an old, tarnished key. I had been holding on to it for a while, unsure of the right moment to give it to her. But now, in this silence, with the weight of the night pressing down on us, I knew it was time. I handed it to her, and she looked at it with a furrowed brow, her confusion growing. It was small, heavy in her hand, but clearly ancient. The key didn't belong in her world. It didn't match anything she knew. It didn't fit any lock she had, any door she had opened before. "What is this?" she asked, the words a whisper, still trying to make sense of everything. I didn't answer her immediately. I could see the doubt in her eyes, the hesitation, but I knew what she needed to hear. "This key will unlock something," I said, my voice steady. "It will lead you to the truth you've been hiding from." I paused, watching her digest the words. "The truth about your family, the truth about everything they've kept from you, and about yourself." She turned the key over in her hand, the metal catching the light, and I could see the questions still swirling in her mind. "But I don't understand," she murmured. "What truth? What are you talking about?" I smiled softly, though it wasn't out of comfort. "You'll understand soon enough," I replied, my voice carrying a hint of something darker, something more. "But you need to follow it. This key doesn't just open doors, it opens minds, your mind, and it will lead you to something you never expected." She was staring at the key, clearly unsure of what I meant, but deep down I knew she would follow it. She would have to. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't here to make it simple. I was here to help her discover the truth, whether she was ready for it or not. She didn't understand the key at first. How could she? But something about it stirred something in her, a curiosity she couldn't shake. The day after the confrontation, she couldn't get the key out of her mind. She spent hours just turning it over in her hands, as if it might whisper its secrets if she held it long enough. Finally, she decided to take the first step. She had to find out what it opened, even if it meant going down a path that felt dangerous. I didn't know if she was truly ready for what she was about to uncover, but I also knew there was no turning back. When she began her search, I watched from the sidelines, not interfering, not giving her answers. She had to learn this on her own. She started by asking questions she had never asked before. She dug through old family documents, albums, letters that had been tucked away in the attic. She reached out to distant relatives, tried to find anyone who might know something. But the more she searched, the more she felt like she was hitting a wall. No one would talk. Everyone clammed up when she mentioned certain names, certain stories. Then one night, after weeks of searching, she came across an old letter buried in a box of forgotten keepsakes. It wasn't much, a simple faded piece of paper, but it was enough. It spoke of a man, an uncle she had never heard of. His name was William. The letter was dated from years ago, and it revealed that he had been disowned by the family. No explanation, just a quiet erasure from the family history. He had vanished completely, as if he had never existed at all. It was strange, the way her family had wiped him out, erased him from every family record, every story they'd ever told. He was gone without a trace, but why? What had happened to him? What had he done to deserve such treatment? As she read, a wave of doubt started to form inside her. All the things she had believed about her parents, their integrity, their moral high ground, began to feel like lies. Could it be that her family wasn't what it seemed? That they had built their entire empire on secrets, on the destruction of people like her uncle? The more she learned, the more she questioned everything she had ever known. If they could hide him, what else were they hiding? What else had they erased, buried in the shadows of their perfect lives? I knew the answers wouldn't come easily, but she was already deep in it. The truth had started to unravel, and there was no going back now. The key had opened the door. What lay beyond it was going to change everything. I could see the change in her. The more she dug into her family's past, the more questions she asked, the deeper she got into the mystery. And then it happened. She uncovered something that I never expected her to find. It was like watching her unearth the last piece of a puzzle I had tried so hard to hide. At first, she was just piecing together the fragments of her family's history. But as she got closer to the truth, she began to look at me differently, more carefully, more suspiciously. I could see it in her eyes, that flicker of doubt, that uncertainty. She had stumbled upon something, and I knew it was only a matter of time before she connected the dots. I had always kept my family's ties to hers a secret, not because I didn't trust her, but because I knew how complicated it was. My family, my wealth, my influence was built on a foundation of power, but not just any kind of power. They had their fingers in every pie, from business to politics, and yes, even in the shadows. It was all part of the game. I had been taught to play it, to maintain my role, to never let anyone see what lay beneath the surface. But she wasn't like anyone else. She wasn't just a girlfriend I could keep at arm's length, someone to show off at fancy parties or talk about my success with. No, she was digging, she was questioning, and I could see that she was getting closer to something she wasn't supposed to find. She'd already figured out that her family had a long history of hiding things, of erasing people who didn't fit the perfect image they wanted to present. But what she didn't know was that my family had been a part of that. In fact, my family's connection to hers was the reason her uncle had disappeared all those years ago. He hadn't just been disowned, he had been silenced because he knew too much about the darker dealings of our families. He had become a threat to the power they had both built, and so they erased him. I knew the day would come when she would stumble upon the truth about me, about my family. And when she did, I knew it would change everything. What started out as a love story, one of passion, excitement, and trust, was starting to turn into something more dangerous. Her family's secrets and mine were intertwined in ways that would shatter her perception of everything she thought she knew. The truth wasn't just about her family, it was about mine too. And the deeper she went, the closer she came to discovering that our relationship wasn't built on love alone. It was built on a web of lies, on betrayal, and on a history that neither of us could escape. I could feel the shift in her, that pull away from me. She had begun to question everything, even me, and I knew I couldn't stop her now. The mystery she was uncovering wasn't just about her family anymore. It was about us, about who we really were and where we truly came from. What I had tried so hard to keep hidden was coming to light, and there was no turning back. She had made progress, more than I ever thought she would. After everything that had happened, the key, the revelations about her uncle, and the growing suspicion about her family, she was relentless. I saw her becoming more determined, more driven to uncover the truth, and I knew she wouldn't stop until she had every answer. But what she didn't know was that she was heading straight into a place where no one was supposed to go. The mansion had been hidden for years, tucked away in an old, forgotten corner of the family estate. It wasn't mentioned in any of the family records, not even a whisper about it in any of the conversations she had with relatives. It was as though it didn't exist at all. But the clues she had been piecing together, the strange letters, the missing family member, the erased history, had led her straight to it. She found the mansion, and I knew it was only a matter of time before she stepped inside. When she told me she had found it, I felt a knot twist in my stomach. I couldn't let her go alone, but I knew she would. I wasn't part of this discovery. This was her journey, one that she had to take on her own. I had to stand back and let it unfold, but I couldn't shake the feeling that what she was about to uncover would be more than she could handle. She arrived at the mansion, a grand but decaying building, forgotten by time. As she walked through the front doors, I could almost feel the weight of history pressing down on her. The air inside was thick with dust, the rooms were shrouded in shadows, and the silence was deafening. It was as though the mansion itself had been locked away for a reason. Its very existence was a secret, something that should never be disturbed. Inside, she began to explore, walking through corridors lined with old portraits, family heirlooms, and artifacts that no one had spoken of in years. And then she found the evidence. Hidden away in a secret compartment, deep within the walls of the mansion, she stumbled upon old documents, photographs, and records that revealed the horrifying truth. Her parents weren't just wealthy, they were involved in something far darker. There were connections to underground dealings, to corruption, and to crimes that went unnoticed for decades. It was as though the mansion itself held the key to understanding the twisted web her family had built, one that she had never even suspected. The more she read, the more her heart sank. These weren't just business deals or shady investments. These were deliberate actions, crimes committed to amass power and wealth at any cost. Her parents, the people she had trusted her whole life, were not who she thought they were. They were complicit in things far more sinister than she could have imagined. She was forced to confront the truth, the full reality of her parents' actions. The mansion wasn't just a symbol of their wealth, it was a reminder of everything they had done to get there. And as she stared at the evidence before her, she realized that the life she had been living was built on lies, on blood money, on a dark legacy that she couldn't erase. I knew this moment would come, and I knew how hard it would be for her to face. But the truth was inescapable. The mansion, with all its secrets, had changed everything. She had uncovered the mansion, the documents, the evidence that shattered everything she thought she knew about her family. I had watched her unravel it all from a distance, never stepping in to guide her, never offering any answers. I knew she wouldn't understand, not yet. But she was getting closer, so much closer, and I could see the weight of everything crashing down on her. The truth was in her hands now, and there was no way to avoid the consequences of it. It was time to tell her, time to reveal everything. The calm I had maintained through this whole ordeal, my silence, my distance, had been calculated. She thought I was just indifferent, just watching her struggle from the sidelines. But it wasn't indifference, it was control. I had been playing a game that had been set in motion long before we even met. And now, the moment had arrived where all the pieces would fall into place. I had to tell her the truth. It wasn't just about her family anymore. It was about mine too, and the way everything was intertwined in a web of betrayal and conspiracy that went back decades. Her family's disgrace wasn't just a matter of bad decisions or bad luck. No, it was the result of something far more deliberate, something planned. I sat across from her, watching her as she processed everything she had learned. Her eyes were wide with disbelief, her hands trembling as she tried to make sense of it all. But there was no easy way to explain it, so I spoke. "I knew," I said quietly, and she looked at me, a mixture of shock and confusion in her gaze. "I knew everything about your family's past, about what they've done, and about what they've been hiding." Her breath caught, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean you knew? You knew about all of this?" Her voice was almost a whisper, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I nodded slowly. "Yes, I knew. My family's ties to yours go back a long way. What they've done, the darkness they've covered up, it's been a part of my family too. I was born into it, and I've been watching, waiting for this moment." She stood up abruptly, her emotions all over the place. Anger, disbelief, confusion. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me? All this time you've just stood by, letting me uncover it all on my own." I stood as well, taking a step closer, "because you needed to see it for yourself. If I had told you earlier, if I had tried to stop you, it wouldn't have meant anything. You had to come to this on your own. You had to understand the full extent of it, and you had to understand who you were really up against." Her eyes filled with tears, the weight of the truth crushing her. "But why? Why are you involved in this? Why didn't you tell me the truth from the beginning?" I hesitated for a moment, then answered, "Because the reason for your disgrace isn't what you think. It wasn't just a matter of failure. It was a betrayal by your parents. They turned on you, forced you into this position to cover up their own sins, and I was part of it. I knew about the conspiracy. I knew how they were manipulating you, and I had to let you find it for yourself." She staggered back, her breath shallow, as she took it all in. "So, it was all a lie? Everything I've known about my family? Everything was a lie?" "Yes," I said softly, "and now the truth is out. The reason they've tried to destroy you, it was never about you. It was about protecting themselves. And now you're the one who has the power to destroy them." She looked at me, the realization dawning on her. "So I have to decide what happens next?" I nodded. "Yes, you've always had the power, even when you didn't know it. And now it's up to you to decide what comes next. This is your moment." The silence between us felt heavy, like everything had shifted. There was no going back now. She stood there, caught in the crossfire of everything she had uncovered. The documents, the mansion, the hidden family secrets, all of it was laid out in front of her. The truth was inescapable. Her parents weren't the people she had thought they were. The things they had done, the lies they had built their empire on, were darker than anything she could have imagined. And now she had the power to change everything. I watched her, my heart heavy with the weight of what was happening. This was the moment, the final moment where everything would either shatter or be hidden away forever. I had known it was coming, and I knew how hard it would be for her to make this decision. But she had to choose. She couldn't keep walking the line between ignorance and truth anymore. The veil had been lifted, and there was no going back. "Do you understand what this means?" I asked. my voice calm, though inside I was anything but. If you expose everything, if you reveal what your family has done, it won't just destroy them, it will destroy everything. Your life, your future, everything you've known. You'll be forced to walk away from the only world you've ever known. She looked at me, her eyes filled with turmoil, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. I could see the conflict within her. She wanted to expose the truth. She wanted justice, wanted to make them pay for everything they had done. But she also knew the price. The price of exposing the truth was high, and it wasn't just about her parents. It was about everything, her life, her reputation, her future. If she went down this path, there was no coming back. But then there was the other option, the one she didn't want to face, the one that could protect her family's legacy, that could keep her in the world she had always known, even if it meant turning a blind eye to the darkness that lay beneath it. She could choose silence, keep the secrets hidden, protect the family she had loved, and let the past remain buried. The cost? Her own soul, her sense of justice, her future as a person who had to live with knowing what she knew, but never speaking it. I stood there, watching her wrestle with the decision. "I'm not asking you to choose for them," I said softly. "I'm asking you to choose for yourself. This is your moment. Whatever you choose will define you, and it will define your future. You can expose everything, or you can protect them, but you can't do both." She took a deep breath, her gaze turning inward as she processed everything. I could see the weight of the decision on her shoulders. She had already lost so much. And now, with this final choice, she had to decide what kind of person she wanted to be. Someone who lived with the truth no matter the cost, or someone who buried it all to preserve the legacy of the family she once loved. I wasn't sure which way she would go, but whatever choice she made, I knew it would change everything, for both of us. And in that moment, I understood. It wasn't just about the past. It was about who she wanted to become, and whether she had the strength to live with the consequences of that choice.